Victoria Sterling grabbed the 5-year-old boy by his thin pajama collar and shoved him out the back door into the freezing December night. "You want to cry? Cry out here where no one can hear you." She locked the door and walked away without looking back. 3 hours later, the mansion's maid found him, barefoot, lips blue, fingers stiff, curled against the iron gate like a forgotten package. What looked like discipline was actually a calculated plan to destroy a child. And the only person standing between Lucas Hartwell and his father's fiancée was a woman everyone had been trained to ignore. Watch until the end. Comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Grace Thompson had worked for wealthy families her entire adult life. 45 years old, 12 of those years spent inside the Hartwell mansion, cleaning floors that cost more than her childhood home, folding sheets that could pay her rent for 6 months. She had learned the rules early. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Don't get involved in family matters. But tonight, those rules were about to shatter. It was 11:47 p.m. when Grace stepped out through the service entrance, a small trash bag in her hand. The December air hit her face like a slap. She pulled her coat tighter and hurried toward the bins near the side of the property. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the night. Soft, broken, almost swallowed by the wind. A child crying. Grace froze. Her heart slammed against her chest. She listened harder, hoping she was wrong. She wasn't. "Hello," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped, then started again. Weaker this time, more desperate. Grace dropped the trash bag and moved toward the sound. Her shoes scraped against the frozen driveway as she rounded the corner toward the front gate. What she saw stopped her cold. Lucas Hartwell, 5 years old, the only son of billionaire William Hartwell III, sat curled against the iron bars of the mansion gate. No jacket, no shoes, just thin cotton pajamas clinging to his shaking body. His knees were pulled to his chest, his arms wrapped around himself so tight it looked painful. His face was red and wet from crying, but his lips were turning blue. "Oh my God," Grace gasped. She ran to him and dropped to her knees. "Lucas! Lucas, look at me!" The boy lifted his head slowly. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. His teeth chattered so violently she could hear them clicking together. "Mrs. Grace?" he whispered. "Yes, baby, it's me. I'm here." Grace yanked off her coat and wrapped it around him. His skin was ice, dangerously cold. "What are you doing out here? Where's your jacket?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He just stared at her, like he wasn't sure she was real. "Lucas," Grace said firmly, fighting to keep her voice calm. "Who put you out here?" The boy's lower lip trembled. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "I was bad," he whispered. "I spilled juice on Victoria's papers. She said I had to stay outside until I learned." Grace's blood turned to ice colder than the night air. "How long have you been out here?" Lucas shook his head. "I don't know. A long time. I tried to go back inside, but the door was locked." Grace scooped him up into her arms. He weighed almost nothing. His body shook against hers, violent tremors that scared her more than anything she'd ever felt. "It's okay," she said, holding him tight. "I've got you. You're safe now." Lucas buried his face into her shoulder and sobbed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spill it. I'm sorry. Please don't tell Daddy, please." Grace carried him quickly toward the house. Her mind raced. 3 hours. He could have been out here for 3 hours in below-freezing temperatures. Children died from less. She pushed through the service entrance and went straight to the kitchen. She set Lucas down on a chair, grabbed every blanket she could find, and wrapped him like a cocoon. "Stay right here," she said. "I'm going to get you something warm to drink." She filled a mug with warm water, not hot, she knew better than that, and brought it to his lips. "Small sips," she instructed. "That's it. Good boy." His hands shook so badly he couldn't hold the mug himself. Grace held it for him, watching his color slowly return, watching his breathing steady. "Mrs. Grace?" "Yes, baby?" "Am I going to die?" The question hit her like a punch to the stomach. "No," she said firmly. "No, you are not going to die. I won't let that happen. You understand me?" Lucas nodded weakly. "Victoria said... She said if I told anyone, Daddy would send me away. She said he loves her more than me." Grace felt rage building in her chest. Hot, consuming, the kind of anger that made good people do dangerous things. "Listen to me," she said, kneeling in front of him. "Your daddy loves you more than anything in this world. Don't you ever believe otherwise. Do you hear me?" Before Lucas could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Victoria Sterling appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked flawless. Silk robe, perfect hair, manicured nails. Not a single thing out of place. She surveyed the scene with the calm detachment of someone watching a mildly interesting television program. "Oh," Victoria said lightly. "There you are." Grace stood slowly. She positioned herself between Victoria and the child. "He was outside," Grace said. Her voice shook despite her effort to control it. "In the freezing cold. For hours." Victoria sighed, like Grace had just told her the dishwasher was broken. "I told him to stand near the door for a few minutes, to think about what he did. He must have wandered off." "He didn't wander anywhere. The door was locked." Victoria's eyes flickered, just for a moment. Then the mask returned. "Doors lock automatically. You know that. He could have frozen to death." "Don't be dramatic." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Children are resilient. A little cold air never hurt anyone." Lucas whimpered behind Grace. He pulled the blankets tighter around himself, trying to disappear. Victoria's gaze shifted to him. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. "You see what happens when you don't listen, Lucas? You cause problems. You make Grace worry. You make everyone's life more difficult." "Don't talk to him like that," Grace said. Victoria turned back to her slowly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Excuse me?" "I said don't talk to him like that. He's 5 years old. He spilled juice. That's what children do." Victoria stepped closer. Her voice dropped to something soft and dangerous. "Let me be very clear with you, Grace. You are staff. You clean, you cook, you do laundry. You do not tell me how to raise this child. You do not question my decisions. And you certainly do not speak to me with that tone. Do you understand?" Grace held her ground. "What I understand is that a child was locked outside in dangerous temperatures. That's not discipline. That's..." "Careful," Victoria interrupted. "Very careful how you finish that sentence." The front door opened. Both women turned as William Hartwell III walked into the foyer. Tall, broad-shouldered, exhausted from a late night of investor calls. He shrugged off his coat and started toward the stairs, then stopped when he noticed the lights in the kitchen. "What's going on?" he asked, walking toward them. "Why is everyone up?" Victoria's entire demeanor transformed in an instant. Her face softened. Her voice warmed. She moved toward William with graceful concern. "Oh, thank God you're home," she said, touching his arm. "I've been so worried." Lucas wandered outside somehow. I've been looking everywhere for him." Grace stared at her in disbelief. William frowned and moved past Victoria into the kitchen. He saw his son wrapped in blankets, face still blotchy from crying, and dropped to his knees immediately. "Buddy, what happened? Are you okay?" Lucas looked at his father, then at Victoria standing behind him, then back at his father. "I'm okay, Daddy." "He's freezing," Grace said. "He was outside for hours, in the cold, without a jacket or shoes." William's frown deepened. "Hours? How is that possible?" "I told you," Victoria said smoothly. "He must have wandered out. I was in my room with a headache. I had no idea until just now." "That's not true." Everyone turned to look at Lucas. The boy's voice was small, barely audible, but his words cut through the room like a blade. "That's not true," he repeated. "Victoria took me outside. She said I had to stay there because I spilled juice. She locked the door." I heard it lock. Silence. William looked at his son, then at Victoria, then back at his son. "Lucas," Victoria said with a gentle, patient smile. "Sweetheart, you were upset. You're confused. I would never." "You did," Lucas said, his voice cracking. "You grabbed my arm and pushed me out. You said, 'Cry out here, where no one can hear you.' You said if I told Daddy, he would send me away." Victoria's smile flickered. William stood slowly. His face had changed. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. "Victoria." "William, darling, he's 5. Children make up stories when they're in trouble. You know how they are." "Victoria." "I'm telling you, I was in bed. I had a migraine." Grace probably misunderstood. "Grace." William turned to her. "What did you see?" Grace took a breath. She knew this moment could cost her everything. Her job, her income, 12 years of stability, everything. She told the truth anyway. "I found Lucas outside by the front gate at 11:47 p.m. He was alone, barefoot, wearing only pajamas. His lips were blue. His fingers were stiff from cold." When I asked him what happened, he said Victoria locked him outside as punishment for spilling juice. He said the door was locked. He couldn't get back in. William absorbed this silently. Victoria laughed, nervous, sharp. "This is ridiculous. You're going to believe the maid over me? Over your fiancé?" "I'm going to believe my son," William said quietly. "And I'm going to believe the woman who has taken care of this family for 12 years without ever lying to me once." Victoria's composure cracked, just slightly, just enough. "William, you're being unreasonable. The child is manipulating you. He's done it before. He doesn't want us to be together. He's jealous. Enough." William's voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, authority, finality. He walked over to Lucas, picked him up gently, and held him against his chest. Lucas clung to him immediately, small hands gripping his father's shirt. "You're cold, buddy," William said softly. "Let's get you warm. Grace, can you run a warm bath? Not too hot, just enough to bring his temperature up safely." "Of course," Grace said. She moved toward the stairs, but paused at the doorway. She looked back at Victoria. Victoria stood alone in the middle of the kitchen. Her perfect composure was beginning to unravel. Her eyes darted between William and Grace, calculating, searching for an angle, a way to regain control. She found none. "William," Victoria said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "Darling, please, let's talk about this. We can figure this out. I love you. I love Lucas. I would never hurt him. You have to believe me." William didn't turn around. "Grace," he said, "after Lucas is warm and settled, Please check all the locks on the exterior doors. I want to know which ones can be locked from the inside only." "Yes, sir." "And Victoria." Now he turned. His eyes were hard. "We'll talk in the morning. Tonight, I want you to stay in the guest wing, away from my son." Victoria's face went white. "You can't be serious." "I have never been more serious about anything in my life." He carried Lucas upstairs without another word. Grace watched Victoria for a long moment. The woman stood motionless, hands clenched at her sides, jaw tight with barely contained fury. Then Victoria looked at Grace. The mask was gone. What remained was something cold, calculating, dangerous. "You think you've won something tonight," Victoria said softly. "You haven't. You've made an enemy you can't afford. I was going to be the lady of this house, the mother of that child. You were going to be nothing. You still are nothing." Grace met her gaze without flinching. "Maybe," Grace said, "but that boy is alive tonight because I'm nothing. And you're going to have to explain to a lot of people why you locked a 5-year-old outside in December." She turned and walked upstairs. Behind her, she heard something shatter. Glass, probably. One of the expensive vases Victoria loved so much. Grace didn't look back. The bath took 30 minutes. Grace monitored the water temperature constantly, adding warm water gradually, watching Lucas's color return. William sat on the bathroom floor the entire time, talking to his son in low, gentle tones. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Lucas said at one point. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." William's face crumpled. "You didn't cause any trouble, buddy. None of this is your fault. Do you understand me? None of it." "Victoria said—" "I don't care what Victoria said." William's voice broke slightly. "I care about you. Only you. You're my son. You're the most important thing in my life. Nothing Victoria says changes that. Nothing anyone says changes that." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Is she going to live here anymore?" William and Grace exchanged a look. "I don't know yet," William admitted. "But I promise you this. No one is ever going to hurt you in this house again. No one is going to lock you outside. No one is going to make you feel scared or unwanted. I promise." Lucas nodded slowly. Then, in a voice so small it almost disappeared, "I was really scared, Daddy. I thought I was going to die out there. I kept calling for you, but you didn't come." William pulled his son out of the tub, wrapped him in towels, and held him so tight it looked like he was trying to absorb all the fear and cold and pain into himself. "I'm here now," he whispered. "I'm here. I've got you. I'm never going to let anything like this happen again." Grace stood quietly by the door, watching father and son cling to each other. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She had worked in this house for 12 years. She had watched Lucas take his first steps in the living room. She had made him his first birthday cake. She had held him when he scraped his knees and comforted him when storms scared him. She loved that boy like her own, and tonight she had almost lost him. Lucas fell asleep in his father's arms around 2 a.m. William carried him to his bedroom and tucked him in, pulling the blankets up to his chin, checking and rechecking that he was warm enough. Grace stood in the doorway. "Grace," William said quietly, not taking his eyes off his son. "Thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." He finally looked at her. His eyes were red, exhausted, haunted. "If you hadn't gone outside tonight, if you hadn't heard him—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "But I did," Grace said. "And he's safe now. That's what matters." William nodded slowly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Has this happened before? Has she done anything like this before? Grace hesitated. Grace, please. There have been moments, Grace admitted carefully. Times when I noticed things. Lucas being sent to his room for small mistakes, being told to be quiet constantly, being excluded from meals because he chewed too loudly. I thought it was just strict discipline. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. William closed his eyes. I didn't see it, he said, more to himself than to her. I didn't want to see it. She was careful, Grace said. She never did anything obvious when you were around. She waited. She timed it. She made sure she always looked like the concerned stepmother whenever you walked in. How long? Sir? How long has this been going on? Grace calculated in her head. Since about 3 months after she moved in. Maybe earlier. I can't be sure. 8 months. Victoria had been torturing his son for 8 months. William sat down heavily on the edge of Lucas's bed. He buried his face in his hands. I proposed to her, he said, his voice muffled. I was going to marry her. I was going to make her Lucas's stepmother. I was going to give her legal authority over my child. You didn't know. I should have known, he looked up. I'm his father. It's my job to protect him. And I failed. I brought a monster into his home, and I failed. Grace walked over and sat beside him. It was unprofessional. It crossed every line of employer-employee boundaries. She didn't care. You can't change what happened, she said. But you can change what happens next. That boy in that bed loves you more than anything in this world. He doesn't need you to be perfect. He needs you to be present. He needs you to believe him. He needs you to fight for him. William looked at his sleeping son. I will, he said. I swear to God, I will. The house was quiet after that. Grace checked all the doors before returning to her room. Every exterior door had a manual lock that could be engaged from inside, the kind that would trap someone outside if deliberately activated. She made notes, times, details, everything she remembered from tonight and everything she had noticed over the past 8 months. Something told her she was going to need it. At 4 a.m., Grace finally lay down in her small room off the kitchen. Sleep didn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucas huddled against that gate, blue-lipped and shivering, asking her if he was going to die. She had seen a lot of things working in wealthy households: affairs, addiction, cruelty dressed up as discipline. But she had never seen anything like Victoria Sterling. That woman was not just strict. She was not just cold. She was dangerous. And Grace understood something that William didn't yet. Victoria wasn't going to accept defeat. She wasn't going to quietly move to the guest wing and wait to be dismissed. She was going to fight, manipulate, scheme. Because women like Victoria didn't lose. They destroyed anyone who stood in their way. As dawn began to lighten the sky outside her window, Grace made a decision. She had spent her whole life following rules, staying invisible, not getting involved. Those days were over. Whatever came next, whatever Victoria tried to do, Grace was going to stand between that woman and Lucas Hartwell, even if it cost her everything. Morning came too soon. Grace had slept maybe 2 hours, broken fragments of rest interrupted by nightmares of blue lips and small hands reaching through iron bars. When she finally gave up on sleep and walked into the kitchen at 5:30 a.m., she found William already there, standing at the counter with a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. He looked worse than she felt. "Did you sleep at all?" Grace asked. William shook his head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him out there, alone, freezing. He set down the coffee cup. I keep thinking, what if you hadn't gone outside? What if you had waited until morning to take out that trash? He would have... But I didn't wait, Grace said firmly. And he's safe now. Is he? William turned to face her. Victoria is still in this house. She's still under the same roof as my son. How is that safe? What are you going to do? William rubbed his face with both hands. I don't know yet. I need to think. I need to figure out the legal implications. We're engaged. She has a key to everything. Access to everything. If I just throw her out, she could make things complicated. With all due respect, sir, complicated shouldn't matter when your son's safety is at stake. I know that. His voice carried an edge of frustration. But I also know Victoria. She's smart. She's connected. If I handle this wrong, she could twist the narrative. Make me look like the bad guy. Make Lucas look like a liar. Grace felt her stomach tighten. You believe him, don't you? William looked at her sharply. Of course I believe him. He's my son. Then act like it. The words came out harder than she intended. William stared at her for a long moment, and Grace braced herself for anger, for dismissal, for the reminder that she was just the help and had no right to speak to him that way. Instead, William nodded slowly. You're right, he said. You're absolutely right. He picked up his phone and dialed. Tom, it's William. I need you at the house. Today. Yes, I know it's Saturday. I don't care. Something's happened and I need legal advice immediately. Grace exhaled quietly. It was a start. The sound of small footsteps on the stairs made both of them turn. Lucas appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, blanket clutched in one hand. His eyes were puffy from sleep, but there was something else there too. Wariness. Fear.
Daddy?
William crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and scooped his son into his arms. Hey, buddy, how are you feeling? Lucas wrapped his arms around his father's neck. I had bad dreams. I know, me too. William held him tight. But you're okay now. You're safe. Lucas pulled back slightly and looked toward the hallway. Is Victoria awake? The question sent a chill through the room. I don't know, William said carefully. Why? Lucas's grip on his father tightened. I don't want to see her, Daddy. Please. I'll be good. I'll be quiet. I won't spill anything. Just, please, don't make me see her. William's face crumpled. He pressed his forehead against his son's. You don't have to see her, he whispered. I promise, okay? I promise. Grace turned away, pretending to busy herself with breakfast preparations. But her hands were shaking. The fear in that little boy's voice was something she would never forget. The morning passed in tense silence. Victoria did not emerge from the guest wing. Grace prepared breakfast for William and Lucas, then cleaned up while they sat together in the living room. William had canceled all his meetings. He wouldn't let Lucas out of his sight. Around 10 a.m., Tom Fitzgerald arrived. He was William's personal attorney, a sharp-eyed man in his 60s who had handled the Hartwell family's legal affairs for over 2 decades. Grace showed him to William's study, where the 2 men closed the door and talked for nearly 2 hours. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she caught fragments when she passed by. Words like documentation and protective measures and child welfare. When Tom finally left, his expression was grim. William found Grace in the kitchen. Tom says I need evidence, William said quietly, keeping his voice low so Lucas wouldn't hear from the next room. What happened last night is serious, but it's my word against hers. Lucas's word against hers. If I try to remove her from the house or break the engagement without something concrete, she could claim I'm being controlling or paranoid. That's insane, Grace said. She locked a child outside in freezing weather. I know, but there are no witnesses except you and Lucas. The security cameras only cover the perimeter, not the interior doors. Victoria will say it was a misunderstanding, that Lucas wandered off, that I'm overreacting because I'm a paranoid single father who listens to the help over his fiancée. Grace felt her blood pressure rise. So what? We just wait for her to do something worse? No. William's jaw tightened. We document everything. Every interaction. Every moment she's alone with Lucas. Everything she says and does. Tom is having a security company come in tomorrow to install cameras inside the house. Until then, I need you to keep Lucas with you whenever I can't be with him personally. Don't leave him alone with her. Not for a second. I won't, Grace promised. I swear. And Grace? William hesitated. I know I'm asking a lot. This goes way beyond your job description. If you want to step back, if this is too much, I understand. Grace looked toward the living room, where Lucas sat on the floor, arranging toy cars with obsessive precision. His shoulders were hunched. He kept glancing toward the hallway, checking for threats. That boy has been alone with his fear for months, Grace said. I'm not stepping back. Not until this is over. William nodded. Something in his eyes shifted. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. Thank you, he said simply. Victoria finally emerged around noon. Grace was in the dining room, polishing silverware, when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Measured, deliberate. The click of designer heels on hard wood. Victoria appeared looking immaculate, hair styled, makeup perfect, wearing a cream cashmere sweater and tailored pants, as if she were about to attend a brunch with wealthy friends, rather than face the consequences of the previous night. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Good morning, Grace, Victoria said pleasantly. Is there coffee? Grace didn't look up from the silverware. On the counter. Victoria poured herself a cup and took a slow sip. Where is William? In his study, working. And Lucas? Grace's hands stilled. With his father. Ah. Victoria set down her cup. I see how it is. The two of you have been busy this morning, haven't you? Filling his head with nonsense, turning him against me. Grace finally looked up. No one needed to turn anyone against you. You did that yourself. Victoria's smile didn't waver. You know, Grace, I've always found you fascinating. 12 years in this house, and you've never once tried to step above your station. Never tried to insert yourself into family matters. Until now. She tilted her head. What changed? A little boy almost died. Oh, please. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. He was outside for a few minutes. Children are dramatic. They exaggerate. He's perfectly fine. His lips were blue. And now they're not. See? Fine. Victoria leaned against the counter. Let me tell you something, Grace. I've dealt with servants who thought they knew better my entire life. Women like you, who think that because they clean the house and cook the meals, they somehow have a stake in how things are run. You don't. You're staff. Replaceable. Forgettable. The moment you stop being useful, you'll be gone, and no one will remember your name. Grace set down the silverware and stood slowly. Maybe, she said, but I'll remember his. I'll remember finding him out there in the cold, scared and alone, asking me if he was going to die. I'll remember what you said to him, how you grabbed him, how you locked that door. She stepped closer. And I'll make sure everyone else remembers too. Victoria's smile finally faded. Be very careful, Victoria said softly. You're making an enemy you can't afford. "I've been poor my whole life," Grace replied. "I can't afford most things, but I can afford to tell the truth." She turned and walked out of the kitchen, heart pounding, hands trembling. Behind her, she heard Victoria's cup shatter against the wall. The days that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Victoria was smart, cunning. She understood that direct confrontation would only prove William right, so she changed tactics. She became softer, gentler, more understanding. At dinner that first evening, she apologized. "William, darling," she said, voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "I've been thinking all day about what happened. You're absolutely right. I was too harsh with Lucas. The stress of the wedding planning, the pressure of trying to bond with a child who resists me at every turn. It all became too much. I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry." William watched her with flat eyes. "A mistake?" "Yes, a moment of poor judgment. I never intended to hurt him. I thought a few minutes of quiet time would help him calm down. I had no idea the door would lock. When I realized what happened, I was frantic. I searched everywhere. Ask Grace. I was in a complete panic." Grace stood by the kitchen doorway, saying nothing. Victoria hadn't been in a panic. Victoria had been in her bedroom, drinking wine, completely undisturbed. "Lucas says you grabbed him," William said. "He says you pushed him outside and told him to cry where no one could hear." Victoria's eyes welled with tears. "He's confused, scared. Children remember things differently when they're upset. I took him to the door, yes. I may have guided him a bit firmly. But push? Never. I would never physically harm a child. You know me, William. You know my heart." William was quiet for a long moment. "I know what my son told me," he said finally, "and I know what Grace saw." "Grace." Victoria said the name like it tasted bitter. "Grace has worked here for years. She's attached to Lucas. She sees me as a threat to her position in this household. Of course she would side with him over me. Grace has no reason to lie. Everyone has reasons to lie when their livelihood is at stake." Victoria reached across the table and took William's hand. "Darling, please. I love you. I love Lucas. I want us to be a family. Don't let one terrible night destroy everything we've built together." William looked down at her hand on his. "I need time," he said. "I need to think." Victoria nodded, squeezing his hand. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, both of you." She stood, kissed his forehead gently, and walked upstairs. Grace waited until she heard the bedroom door close. "You're not buying that," she said. William shook his head slowly. "No, but I need her to think I might be." The security cameras were installed 2 days later. Small, discreet, covering every hallway, every common room, every exterior door. Victoria noticed them immediately. "What are these?" she asked, pointing at one mounted near the staircase. "Added security," William said smoothly. "After what happened with Lucas wandering off, I realized we need better coverage inside the house. For everyone's protection." Victoria's smile stayed perfectly in place. "Of course, that makes complete sense." But Grace saw the flash of something dark in her eyes. Calculation. Adjustment. Victoria adapted. She never touched Lucas again. She never raised her voice around him. She never did anything that the cameras could capture and use against her. Instead, her cruelty became invisible. She controlled with whispers. Grace first noticed it 3 days after the cameras went up. She was passing Lucas's bedroom when she heard Victoria's voice inside, soft and gentle. "Understand, don't you, Lucas? I'm not angry. I just want us to be friends. But you made your daddy very worried." You told stories that weren't true. That made him sad. You don't want to make Daddy sad, do you? No, Lucas whispered. Of course not. Because when Daddy is sad, he can't work. And when he can't work, we can't live in this nice house. And if we can't live here, where would you go? You'd have to live somewhere else. Without Grace. Without your toys. Without Daddy. Silence. You don't want that, do you? No. Then you need to be a good boy. You need to tell Daddy that you made a mistake, that you exaggerated, that I was never mean to you. Can you do that for me? Can you be a good boy? Grace pushed the door open. Victoria turned, still smiling. Oh, Grace, I was just having a little chat with Lucas. We're becoming friends, aren't we, sweetie? Lucas sat on his bed, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't respond. Lucas, Grace said firmly, your father wants you downstairs. The boy practically ran from the room. Victoria stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. You really should knock before entering rooms. It's basic courtesy. And you should stop manipulating a 5-year-old. It's basic decency. Victoria laughed softly. Manipulating? I was bonding, building a relationship. Something you wouldn't understand, given your... She paused, eyes traveling over Grace with deliberate condescension. Circumstances. My circumstances are just fine. Are they? Victoria stepped closer. You're unmarried, no children of your own, living in a servant's quarters in someone else's house. Your entire existence depends on the goodwill of people like William. People like me. One word from the lady of this house and you're gone. No references, no recommendations. Just another unemployed domestic worker with nothing to show for 12 years of mopping floors. Grace held her ground. You're not the lady of this house. Yet. Yet, Victoria smiled. That's the key word, isn't it? William loves me. He'll remember that soon enough. Whatever doubts you've planted will fade. Whatever stories Lucas tells will be forgotten. And when we're married, when I have legal standing in this household, the first thing I'll do is show you the door. If you marry him. Oh, I will. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't spend 2 years building this relationship to walk away because of a maid and a whiny child. William Hartwell is going to be my husband. This house is going to be mine. And anyone who stands in my way is going to regret it. She walked out, leaving Grace standing alone in the room. Lucas stopped talking. Grace noticed it gradually over the following week. At first, she thought he was just tired, recovering, processing. But the silence grew deeper, more complete. He stopped asking questions at breakfast. He stopped laughing at cartoons. He stopped running through the halls or making car noises with his toys. He moved through the house like a ghost, small and careful, taking up as little space as possible. One morning, Grace found him standing in the doorway of the kitchen, just watching her. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, smiling. "You want some pancakes?" Lucas didn't answer. He just stood there. "Lucas, did you hear me?" He nodded slowly, then, almost inaudibly, "Am I allowed to come in?" Grace's heart cracked. "Of course you're allowed. You're always allowed. This is your home." He stepped inside hesitantly, eyes scanning the room like he expected someone to appear and yell at him. Grace knelt down to his level. "Lucas, look at me." He did. His eyes were dull, exhausted, far too old for a 5-year-old. "Has Victoria been talking to you again, when I'm not around?" Lucas's whole body tensed. "It's okay," Grace said quickly. "You can tell me. You're not in trouble. I promise." He was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, in a voice barely above a breath, "She says things." What kind of things? That if I'm not good, Daddy will send me away. That if I tell stories, nobody will believe me. That you're going to leave soon because you don't really care about me. His eyes filled with tears. She says I make everything worse. She says I'm the reason everyone's unhappy. Grace pulled him into a hug. He collapsed against her, small body shaking with silent sobs. Listen to me, Grace said fiercely. None of that is true. Not a single word. Your daddy loves you more than anything in this world. I'm not going anywhere. And you don't make anything worse. You make everything better. Do you understand? Lucas cried harder. She's lying to you, Grace continued. Everything she says is a lie. She wants you to be scared. She wants you to be quiet. But you don't have to be. You can tell your daddy anything. You can tell me anything. We believe you. We will always believe you. She held him until his sobs subsided into hiccups, then helped him wash his face and led him to the table for breakfast. As she made his pancakes, she silently composed the list in her head. Every incident, every whispered manipulation, every moment of psychological cruelty she had witnessed or suspected. The cameras caught the visible things, but Victoria's real weapons were invisible. Words that left no marks. Fear that couldn't be photographed. Grace was going to have to find another way. That afternoon, she asked William for a private conversation. The cameras aren't catching everything, Grace said. Victoria knows where they are. She's careful. But she's still getting to Lucas. William looked up from his desk, face drawn. What do you mean? Grace told him everything. The whispers, the threats, the manipulation, the way Lucas had started asking permission to exist in his own home. By the time she finished, William's hands were clenched into fists. I'll talk to him, he said. That might make it worse. If Victoria finds out Lucas talked, she'll punish him for it, quietly, in ways we can't prove. Then what do I do? William's voice cracked with frustration. How do I protect my son from someone who knows exactly how to hurt him without leaving a trace? You get her out of this house, Grace said firmly. I don't care about the legal complications. I don't care about her connections. I don't care what she might say or do. That woman is destroying your son from the inside out. Every day she stays here, a little more of him disappears. William was quiet for a long moment. You're right, he finally said. I've been trying to do this the smart way, the careful way. But careful doesn't matter if Lucas breaks before I can finish building a case. He picked up his phone. Tom, I need you back here, today. I want Victoria out of this house by the end of the week. The conversation with Tom lasted 3 hours. Grace kept Lucas busy in the playroom, teaching him card games, reading him stories, trying to coax back some spark of the boy he used to be. Around 7 p.m., William appeared in the doorway. Lucas, he said, kneeling down. I need to tell you something important. Lucas looked at him warily. Am I in trouble? No, buddy, you're not in trouble. But I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Lucas nodded slowly. Victoria is going to leave, William said. She's going to pack her things and find somewhere else to live. She won't be staying here anymore. Lucas's eyes went wide. Really? Really. But, Lucas hesitated. She said if she leaves, you'll be sad. She said you love her more than me. William pulled his son into his arms. I love you more than anyone in the entire world. More than Victoria. More than this house. More than anything. Do you understand? You are the most important person in my life. You always have been. You always will be. Lucas started to cry. I was so scared, Daddy. She was so mean when you weren't looking. She said nobody would believe me. She said I was making things up. I believe you, William said fiercely. "I believe every word, and I'm so sorry it took me so long to see what was happening. I'm sorry I let her hurt you. That's never going to happen again. I promise." Grace stood in the corner of the room, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in weeks, she felt something like hope. But the confrontation with Victoria had not yet happened, and Grace knew, with absolute certainty, that Victoria Sterling was not going to go quietly. The storm was coming. When William told Victoria she needed to leave, the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. They were in his study. The door was closed, but Grace stood nearby in the hallway, pretending to dust a shelf she had already dusted twice. "Leave?" Victoria's voice was incredulous. "You're asking me to leave?" "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I want you packed and gone by Friday." "William, this is insane. We're engaged. We're supposed to be married in 4 months. You can't just—" "I can, and I am." "Because of what? Because of lies from a child and a maid? This is exactly what she wants, don't you see? Grace has been trying to undermine me since the day I moved in. She's jealous. She's possessive. She's the only reason my son is still alive." Silence. "That's dramatic, don't you think?" Victoria's voice turned cold. "I made one mistake. One moment of poor judgment in 2 years. And suddenly I'm a monster? You locked a 5-year-old outside in freezing temperatures. You've been whispering threats in his ear for months. You've made him afraid to speak, afraid to ask for food, afraid to exist in his own home. That's not one mistake, Victoria. That's a pattern. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it to you. I need to protect my son, and the best way to do that is to get you out of this house." Grace heard footsteps, then Victoria's voice, lower now, controlled and venomous. "You're making a mistake, William. A very serious mistake. I've given you 2 years of my life. I've supported you through business deals, charity events, social obligations. I've helped build your image, your reputation. Do you really want to throw all that away? My reputation means nothing compared to my son's well-being. Does it? Because when this gets out, and it will get out, people are going to ask questions. They're going to wonder what kind of man dumps his fiancée because his housekeeper convinced him to. They're going to wonder if you're stable, if you're fit to run a company, if you're fit to raise a child. Is that a threat? It's reality." Victoria's voice hardened. "You don't get to discard me like yesterday's trash, William. I'm Victoria Sterling. My family has connections in every industry that matters to you. Banks, investors, board members. One word from me, and your business dealings get a lot more complicated. Then say the word. I don't care. You will, when the lawsuits start, when the rumors spread, when your precious company starts bleeding because no one wants to partner with a man who treats women like garbage." Grace heard William take a step closer to Victoria. "Get out of my house." The door flew open. Victoria stormed past Grace without a glance, heels clicking furiously on the hardwood floor. She climbed the stairs and slammed the guest room door so hard the walls shook. William appeared in the doorway of his study. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "She's leaving Friday," he said. "No matter what." Grace nodded. "I know." "She's going to make trouble." "I know that too." William looked toward the stairs, toward where his son was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. "Let her try," he said quietly. "I'm done being afraid of her." Victoria spent the next 2 days packing. She moved through the house like a ghost, collecting her belongings with deliberate slowness, casting cold glances at Grace whenever their paths crossed. She never spoke to Lucas again, but once Grace caught her standing outside his bedroom door, just watching him sleep through the crack. The look on her face was not regret. It was calculation. On Thursday night, Grace was doing a final walkthrough of the house before bed when she noticed Victoria's door was open. She paused, listening. Victoria was on the phone. Not over. Not by a long shot. He thinks he can just throw me away? After everything I've invested? He has no idea what I'm capable of. Grace pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. The child is the key, Victoria continued. William would do anything for that boy. Anything. If something happened, if Lucas got hurt or sick, if there was an emergency, William would come running. He'd need support, comfort, someone to lean on. Grace's blood ran cold. I'm not saying anything specific, Victoria said, her voice dropping lower. I'm just saying, accidents happen. Especially with children. Especially with children who wander off in the middle of the night. Grace stopped breathing. I need to go. I'll call you tomorrow. The phone clicked off. Grace heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly moved down the hallway, pretending she had just arrived. Victoria appeared in her doorway, saw Grace, and smiled. Late night, Grace? Just finishing up. Victoria leaned against the doorframe. You know, I'm almost going to miss this place. The house, the grounds, the staff who think they understand things they don't. Good night, Victoria. Good night. Victoria's smile widened. Sleep well, while you can. Grace walked away without responding, but her hands were shaking. Victoria wasn't just leaving. She was planning something, and whatever it was, Lucas was at the center of it. Grace found William in his study, still awake, going through documents. We have a problem, she said. A serious one. She told him what she had heard, every word, every implication. By the time she finished, William's face was white. She wouldn't, he said. She couldn't possibly. She locked him outside in December, Grace reminded him. She spent months breaking him down piece by piece. You think she has limits? You think there's a line she won't cross? William grabbed his phone. I'm calling the police. And telling them what? That you overheard your ex-fiancée making vague comments on the phone? They'll say it's hearsay. They'll say she's just venting. They won't do anything until something actually happens. So what do? Just wait for her to hurt my son? No. Grace took a deep breath. We don't let Lucas out of our sight. Not for a second. Not until she's gone. And even after she leaves, we stay vigilant. We change the locks. We update the security codes. We make sure she can never get back into this house. William nodded slowly. And if she tries something anyway? Grace looked him in the eye. Then we stop her. Whatever it takes. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Victoria's bags were lined up by the front door. A car was waiting in the driveway. Everything was ready. But Victoria took her time. She walked through every room one last time, trailing her fingers along surfaces, pausing to look at photographs, memorizing details like she was cataloging evidence for future use. Lucas stayed in his room with Grace, door locked, curtains drawn. Finally, Victoria came to the foyer where William stood waiting. Well, she said, pulling on her coat, this is it. This is it. Victoria studied his face for a long moment. You're going to regret this, William. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. You're going to wake up and realize you made the worst decision of your life. I doubt that. We'll see. She picked up her purse and walked toward the door, then paused, turned. Give my regards to Lucas. Tell him I'll be thinking of him. The words hung in the air like a threat. Then she was gone. The car pulled away, The gate closed behind it, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt like it could breathe again. Grace brought Lucas downstairs. "She left?" he asked, looking around nervously. "She left," Grace confirmed. Lucas ran to his father and hugged him tight. "She's really gone?" "Really gone." But even as he said the words, William's eyes drifted toward the window, toward the road beyond the gate. Victoria Sterling was gone, but she had left something behind. A promise. A threat. A shadow that would haunt them long after the car disappeared from sight. The first week after Victoria left felt like holding your breath underwater. Grace kept waiting for something to happen. A phone call. A letter. A shadow at the window. Something. But the days passed quietly, almost normally, and slowly the tension in the house began to ease. Lucas started smiling again. Not the bright, carefree smiles of a child who had never known fear, but small, hesitant smiles that said he was testing the waters, checking to see if Joy was safe again. William worked from home. He canceled trips. He rearranged meetings. For the first time in years, he was actually present in his son's life, and Grace watched the two of them begin to rebuild something that had been badly damaged. "Daddy, watch this!" Lucas stood in the living room, balancing on one foot, arms spread wide like airplane wings. "I see you, buddy. That's amazing. I can do it for 10 whole seconds." "Let's count together. 1, 2, 3. Grace stood in the doorway, watching. Her heart felt full in a way it hadn't in months. Maybe it was over. Maybe Victoria had accepted defeat and moved on. Maybe the threat had been empty, just the bitter words of a woman who had lost. Maybe. But Grace couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing in the eye of a storm. 2 weeks after Victoria's departure, Lucas woke up with a fever. Grace found him in his bed, cheeks flushed, forehead burning. He was shivering despite being wrapped in blankets. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, pressing her palm to his skin.
"You don't feel so good, do you?"
"My head hurts," Lucas whispered, "and my legs." Grace called William immediately. He was in the kitchen within seconds. "How high is his temperature?" 101.3. "Not dangerous yet, but we should keep an eye on it." William sat on the edge of Lucas's bed, stroking his son's hair. "Hey, buddy, you're going to be okay. Just a little bug. Grace is going to take care of you." "I don't want to be sick," Lucas said weakly. "Nobody does, but sometimes our bodies need rest. You just lie here, drink lots of water, and let us take care of everything." By that afternoon, the fever had climbed to 102.8. By evening, 103.4. Grace called the family doctor. Dr. Patterson arrived within the hour, examined Lucas thoroughly, and pulled William aside. "It's not just a virus," Dr. Patterson said quietly. "His immune system is compromised, weakened. I'm seeing signs of prolonged stress on his body. His lymph nodes are swollen. His respiratory system is struggling." "What does that mean?" William asked. Dr. Patterson hesitated. "It means his body has been fighting something for a while, longer than just a few days." "Has he been under unusual stress recently? Physical or emotional?" William's face went pale. "He was exposed to cold temperatures, multiple times, over several weeks." "Exposure?" Dr. Patterson frowned. "What kind of exposure?" William told him everything. The nights locked outside, the garden shed, the repeated incidents that had gone unnoticed for months. By the time he finished, Dr. Patterson's expression had shifted from professional concern to something much darker. "William, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Anything. Did you know this was happening? While it was happening?" "No," William's voice cracked. "I had no idea until recently. By the time I found out, the damage was already done." Dr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. I'm going to recommend we move Lucas to the hospital. His fever isn't responding to standard treatment. If his condition worsens, we need to be prepared. Hospital? William's legs seemed to weaken. Is it that serious? It could be. Repeated cold exposure in young children can cause lasting damage to the immune system. His body is fighting, but it's been fighting for too long. It's exhausted. Grace felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She steadied herself against the wall. Whatever you need, William said. Whatever it takes. I don't care about the cost. Just help my son. The ambulance arrived within 20 minutes. Grace rode with Lucas, holding his small hand the entire way. His eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow. Every few minutes he would murmur something incoherent, words that sounded like pleas. Please, I'll be good. Please don't. Grace leaned close to his ear. You are good, baby. You're so good. Nobody's going to hurt you. I'm right here. At the hospital, they took Lucas immediately. Grace and William were directed to a waiting room filled with plastic chairs and the smell of antiseptic. They sat in silence for nearly an hour. Finally, William spoke. This is my fault. Don't. It is. I brought her into our home. I trusted her. I left my son alone with her because I was too busy, too distracted, too wrapped up in my own life to pay attention. You didn't know. I should have known. William's voice broke. I'm his father. It's my job to protect him. And I failed. I failed him in every way that matters. Grace reached over and took his hand. He gripped it like a drowning man clutching a lifeline. Lucas is strong, she said. Stronger than you know. He survived everything Victoria did to him. He'll survive this, too. How do you know? Grace looked at him steadily. Because I refuse to believe anything else. Dr. Patterson found them 2 hours later. His face was grim. Lucas's fever spiked to 104.6. We've managed to bring it down, but his body is struggling. His lungs are showing signs of infection. We're starting him on IV antibiotics and monitoring his vitals constantly. Can I see him? William asked. In a little while. Right now, he needs rest. What are his chances? Dr. Patterson hesitated. That hesitation said more than any words could. We're doing everything we can, he finally said. The next 24 hours will be critical. William made it to the bathroom before he broke down. Grace heard him through the door, heard the sounds of a father falling apart, and she leaned against the wall outside and let her own tears fall. She had known something was wrong that first night. She had felt it in her bones when she heard Lucas crying in the cold, but she had never imagined it would come to this. A little boy in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, because the woman who was supposed to love him had tried to break him instead. Around midnight, a nurse came to get them. He's awake, she said. He's asking for you. Grace and William rushed to Lucas's room. He looked impossibly small against the white sheets, surrounded by machines and wires. But his eyes were open, and when he saw them, something flickered in his face. Daddy? William crossed the room in 3 steps and took his son's hand. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. Am I dying? The question hit like a physical blow. William's face crumpled, but he forced himself to smile. No, you're not dying. You're sick, but the doctors are going to help you get better. And I'm going to be right here the whole time. I'm not leaving. I promise. Lucas's eyes drifted to Grace. Mrs. Grace? I'm here too, baby. Don't go away. Please. Grace moved closer and gently touched his forehead. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. You're stuck with me. Lucas almost smiled. Then his eyes fluttered closed, and he drifted back to sleep. Grace and William stayed by his bed all night. Neither of them slept. Neither of them could. The next morning, two people Grace didn't recognize appeared at the hospital room door. A woman in her 40s with short gray hair and a clipboard. A man about the same age, wearing a badge that identified him as a child welfare investigator. "Mr. Hartwell?" the woman said. "I'm Patricia Moore with Child Protective Services. This is Detective Carl Warren. We need to speak with you about your son's condition." William stood slowly. "Of course. Whatever you need." They moved to a private conference room down the hall. Grace wasn't invited, but she positioned herself near the door and listened. "Mr. Hartwell, the hospital filed a mandatory report regarding Lucas's condition. The attending physician indicated signs of repeated exposure trauma and possible neglect or abuse." "It wasn't neglect," William said quickly. "I didn't know. My former fiancée, she was the one who—" "Please, Mr. Hartwell, start from the beginning." William told them everything. Grace heard his voice crack multiple times, heard him pause to collect himself, heard the weight of guilt and shame and desperation in every word. When he finished, Patricia Moore spoke carefully. "We're going to need to speak with everyone who had contact with Lucas during the period in question. That includes household staff, family members, and of course, Victoria Sterling. She left 2 weeks ago. I don't know where she's staying. We'll find her." Detective Warren spoke for the first time. "If what you're describing is accurate, she may be facing serious charges. Felony child endangerment, potentially worse." "I don't care about charges," William said. "I care about my son. He's in that bed because of her. He almost died because of her." "We understand," Patricia Moore said. "Our priority is Lucas's safety and well-being, but we need to investigate thoroughly. That means interviewing everyone involved. Whatever you need."
I have nothing to hide.
Grace was interviewed next. She sat across from Patricia Moore and Detective Warren in the same conference room. Her hands were steady, but her heart pounded. "How long have you worked for the Hartwell family?" 12 years. "And when did you first notice problems with Victoria Sterling's treatment of Lucas?" Grace took a deep breath. "About 3 months after she moved into the house. It started small. Lucas being sent to his room for minor things, being told to be quiet constantly, being excluded from meals. I thought it was just strict discipline at first. I didn't want to interfere in family matters." "When did you realize it was something more?" "The night I found him outside, freezing, alone. That's when I knew this wasn't discipline. This was cruelty." She told them everything. The incidents, the whispers, the psychological manipulation, the threats. Everything she had witnessed and everything she had suspected. When she finished, Detective Warren leaned back in his chair. "Why didn't you report this sooner?" Grace felt shame burn in her chest. "Because I was afraid. I'm just the help. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I didn't think anyone would listen." "We're listening now." Over the next 48 hours, the investigation expanded rapidly. Security footage from the Hartwell mansion was subpoenaed and reviewed. Timestamps showed multiple instances of exterior doors being locked during late-night hours. Interior cameras captured Victoria standing near locked doors, watching, waiting. Staff members were interviewed. The gardener, the delivery drivers, neighbors who had seen a small boy outside alone in the cold. Each testimony added another piece to the puzzle. And then they found Victoria. She was staying at a luxury hotel 30 miles away, charging everything to credit cards linked to William's accounts. When police arrived to bring her in for questioning, she was in the middle of a spa treatment. Grace heard about the arrest from Detective Warren. "She didn't go quietly," he said. "Started screaming about harassment and false accusations. Said she had connections who would make sure we all lost our jobs." "What happens now?" She's being charged with felony child endangerment and reckless assault of a minor. Given the severity of Lucas's condition, the DA is considering additional charges. Will she go to prison? That's for a court to decide. But based on what we've found, Detective Warren nodded slowly. I think she's going to have a very hard time explaining her way out of this. Lucas's condition stabilized on the third day. The antibiotics were working. His fever dropped. His breathing improved. The doctor said he was out of immediate danger, though he would need weeks of recovery. When Grace walked into his room that afternoon, he was sitting up in bed, eating Jell-O. "Mrs. Grace!" His face lit up. "Look, it's green!" Grace laughed, the sound catching in her throat. "I see that. Is it good?" "It's wiggly!" He demonstrated by shaking the spoon, making the Jell-O dance. Grace sat down beside his bed. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Better. My head doesn't hurt anymore." He paused, looking down at his Jell-O. "Mrs. Grace? Daddy said Victoria is in trouble. Real trouble. With the police." "That's right. Because of what she did to me?" "Yes, baby. Because of what she did to you." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Is she going to come back?" "No." Grace took his hand. "She's never coming back. Ever. You're safe now." "Promise?" "I promise." Lucas nodded slowly. Then, "Mrs. Grace? I was really scared. All those times she put me outside, I thought maybe I really was bad. Maybe I deserved it." Grace's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Listen to me," she said, leaning close. "You never deserved any of it. Not one single moment. What Victoria did was wrong. It was cruel, and it had nothing to do with you being bad. Because you are not bad. You are good and kind and brave and wonderful. Do you understand?" Tears spilled down Lucas's cheeks. "I don't feel brave." Brave isn't about not being scared. Brave is about surviving even when you are scared. And you did that, Lucas. You survived. That makes you the bravest person I know. Lucas set down his Jell-O and reached for her. Grace hugged him gently, mindful of the IV lines. "I love you, Mrs. Grace," he whispered. "I love you too, baby. So much." William appeared in the doorway. He stood there for a moment, watching them, and Grace saw tears on his face, too. Then he walked over, sat on the other side of the bed, and wrapped his arms around both of them. For a long time, no one spoke. No one needed to. Victoria's lawyer tried everything: misunderstanding, exaggeration, a bitter maid with a vendetta, a confused child who couldn't distinguish reality from imagination. Every excuse, every deflection, every manipulation tactic Victoria had ever used, none of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming: security footage, medical records, testimony from multiple witnesses. The pattern of abuse was clear, documented, undeniable. The preliminary hearing was held 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest. Grace was called to testify. She sat in the witness box, hands folded in her lap, and looked directly at Victoria for the first time since that last morning at the mansion. Victoria looked different, smaller. Her perfect composure was cracked, her expensive clothes replaced by standard courtroom attire. She stared at Grace with pure hatred. Grace didn't flinch. "Ms. Thompson," the prosecutor said, "can you describe what you witnessed on the night of December 14th? Grace told her story, every detail, every moment. The cold, the crying, the blue lips and stiff fingers, the locked door, Victoria's calm dismissal, Lucas's whispered confession. She said he needed to learn, Grace testified. She said children are resilient. She showed no concern for his condition, no remorse, no regret. And in the weeks prior to that night, did you observe other instances of concerning behavior? Yes, many. Victoria controlled Lucas through fear. She made him afraid to speak, afraid to play, afraid to exist in his own home. She whispered threats when no one was watching. She told him his father would send him away if he wasn't perfect. She systematically dismantled a 5-year-old child's sense of safety and self-worth. Objection, Victoria's lawyer called. Speculation. I'll rephrase, the prosecutor said. Ms. Thompson, did Lucas ever describe to you what Victoria said to him in private? Yes. He told me she said he made everything worse, that he was the reason everyone was unhappy, that if he told anyone the truth, no one would believe him. Victoria's face remained impassive, but Grace saw her hands tighten in her lap. One final question, Miss Thompson. Why did you finally decide to speak up? Grace looked at Victoria, then at the judge, then back at the prosecutor. Because silence protects abusers, she said. I stayed quiet too long because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of not being believed. But my fear almost cost a child his life. I will never be silent again. The courtroom was quiet. Victoria was denied bail. The trial was set for 3 months later, but everyone knew the outcome was inevitable. The evidence was too strong. The testimony too damning. Victoria Sterling was going to prison. The day the news broke publicly, Grace found William sitting alone in his study, staring at a photograph of Lucas as a baby. It's over, he said quietly. Isn't it? The legal part, yes. The rest... Grace sat down across from him. The rest takes time. How do I help him? How do I undo what she did? You don't undo it. You can't. What happened to Lucas will always be part of his story. But it doesn't have to define it. You help him by being present, by listening, by believing him, by showing him every single day that he is loved and safe and valued. William looked at her. You've already done all of that. More than I have. Then learn from it, and do more. He nodded slowly. Grace, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done, for Lucas, for this family. I don't have the words. You don't need words. You need action. Be the father Lucas deserves. That's all the thanks I need. That night, Grace tucked Lucas into bed for the first time since he came home from the hospital. He looked so different from the pale, shivering boy she had found at the gate all those weeks ago. There was color in his cheeks, light in his eyes. A spark that had been nearly extinguished was slowly, carefully, burning again. Mrs. Grace? Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to stay? Forever? Grace sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand. Forever is a long time, she said. But I'm going to stay as long as you need me, and probably longer than that. Good, he smiled sleepily. Because I need you a lot. I need you too, baby. Mrs. Grace? Yes? Thank you for finding me, that night, when I was cold. Grace leaned down and kissed his forehead. I will always find you, she whispered. No matter what, no matter where. I will always, always find you. Lucas closed his eyes, still smiling. And for the first time in months, Grace believed that everything might actually be okay. Not perfect, not unmarked by what had happened, but okay. Sometimes, okay was enough. Recovery was not a straight line. Grace learned this in the weeks that followed, watching Lucas take 2 steps forward and one step back, over and over again. Some days he laughed freely, played loudly, asked 100 questions before breakfast. Other days he retreated into himself, barely speaking, flinching at sounds that shouldn't have startled anyone. The therapist William hired called it normal, expected. Trauma didn't heal on a schedule. It healed in spirals, circling back to the same wounds before finally, slowly, moving past them. Grace tried to be patient. Most days, she succeeded. "Mrs. Grace?" Lucas stood in the kitchen doorway, clutching a stuffed bear that had become his constant companion since the hospital. "Good morning, sweetheart. You're up early." "I had a dream." Grace set down the spatula and turned to face him fully. "A bad one?" Lucas hesitated. "Not bad, just weird. Victoria was there, but she was behind glass, like at the zoo, and she kept talking, but I couldn't hear her."
How did that make you feel?
He thought about it seriously, the way children sometimes do when they're trying to find the right words for complicated emotions. "Safe," he finally said, "like she couldn't get to me anymore." Grace felt something loosen in her chest. "That's because she can't, baby. She's far away, and she's never coming back." "I know." Lucas walked over and climbed onto a kitchen stool. "But sometimes my brain forgets." Brains do that. They hold on to scary things because they're trying to protect us. But eventually, the brain learns that the scary thing is really gone. It just takes time. "How much time?" "I don't know. Different for everyone." Lucas nodded, accepting this. Then, "Can I have pancakes?" Grace smiled. "You can have whatever you want." William's mornings had changed completely since Victoria left. Before, he had been out the door by 7 a.m., rushing to meetings, buried in phone calls, barely present for breakfast. Now he came downstairs in casual clothes, made his own coffee, and sat at the table with Lucas until the school bus came. "Daddy, did you know that blue whales are the biggest animals ever? Like, ever in the whole history of everything?" "I did know that." "Did you know their hearts are as big as a car?" "That's crazy!" Lucas's eyes went wide. "Can you imagine having a car inside your chest?" "It would make driving a lot easier." Lucas laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and Grace caught William's eye across the kitchen. He was smiling, but there was something else there too. Grief, maybe, for all the mornings he had missed, all the conversations he had rushed through or skipped entirely. He was trying to make up for lost time. Grace could see that. The question was whether lost time could ever really be recovered. The trial date approached like a storm on the horizon. Grace felt it in the way William grew quieter as the weeks passed, in the way Lucas's nightmares returned with increasing frequency, in the way the whole house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. 3 days before the trial, the prosecutor called William with an update. "Victoria's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal," William told Grace afterward. "She wants to plead guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for reduced sentencing." "What does that mean?" "It means instead of facing felony child endangerment with potential prison time, she could plead to misdemeanor child neglect and get probation." Grace felt her blood pressure spike. "That's not justice. That's not even close." "I know. The prosecutor is recommending we reject the deal and go to trial. He says the evidence is strong enough for a conviction on the original charges." "What do you want to do?" William was quiet for a long moment. "I want her to pay for what she did." Every day, Lucas wakes up scared. Every nightmare he has. Every time he flinches when someone moves too fast. She did that. She deserves to answer for it. Then reject the deal. The prosecutor warned me that trials are unpredictable. Victoria's lawyer is good. She might find a way to create doubt, to make it seem like we're exaggerating. Lucas might have to testify. Grace's stomach dropped. "You can't put him on the stand. He's been through enough." "I know. That's what I told them. They said there are ways to do it. Video testimony, closed sessions. But still, William rubbed his face. How do I ask my son to relive the worst moments of his life in front of strangers? You don't, Grace said firmly. You fight for him so he doesn't have to fight for himself. That's what fathers do. William looked at her. What would you do if he were your son? Grace didn't hesitate. I would burn the world down before I let anyone hurt him again, and I would make sure the person who already hurt him faced every consequence the law allows. William nodded slowly. Then we reject the deal. We go to trial. The night before the trial, Lucas couldn't sleep. Grace found him sitting at the top of the stairs at 2 a.m., hugging his stuffed bear, staring into the darkness below. Hey, she said softly, sitting down beside him. What's going on? Tomorrow is the day, right? When they decide about Victoria? That's right. Will I have to see her? No, baby. You don't have to go anywhere near that courtroom. Lucas was quiet. Then, what if they let her go? Grace felt her heart clench. They won't. But what if they do? What if she comes back? Grace put her arm around him and pulled him close. Listen to me. No matter what happens in that courtroom tomorrow, Victoria Sterling is never coming back into this house. She's never going to be alone with you again. She's never going to hurt you again. Your daddy and I will make sure of that. Do you understand? Lucas nodded against her shoulder. I'm still scared. I know. Being scared is okay. You can be scared and brave at the same time. Really? Really. In fact, that's the only way to be brave. You can't be brave if you're not scared first. Lucas thought about this. So, being scared means I'm doing it right? Grace smiled. Exactly right. They sat there together until Lucas's eyes grew heavy and his head drooped against her arm. Grace carried him back to bed, tucked him in, and stood watching him sleep for a long time. Tomorrow would change everything. For better or worse, the story Victoria had started was finally going to end. The trial lasted 4 days. Grace didn't attend. Someone needed to stay with Lucas. But she followed every update through William's calls and the evening news. Day 1 was opening statements. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The pattern of abuse, the medical evidence, the security footage, the testimony of witnesses. Victoria's lawyer countered with claims of misunderstanding, a grieving stepmother-to-be who made mistakes while trying to discipline a difficult child. Difficult, William said that night, his voice tight with anger. They're calling my son difficult. Like he asked for this. Like he deserved it. They're desperate, Grace said. They have nothing else. Day 2 brought the medical testimony. Dr. Patterson took the stand and explained, in clinical detail, the damage that repeated cold exposure had done to Lucas's immune system. The photographs from the hospital were shown to the jury. A small boy in a big bed, surrounded by machines, fighting for his life. William came home that night, looking like he had aged 10 years. I couldn't look at the pictures, he admitted. I had to leave the courtroom. I sat in the hallway and tried to breathe. That's okay. You don't have to watch. I should be there. I should be strong. You are strong. Being overwhelmed doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. Day 3 was Grace's testimony. She had prepared for weeks, going over her statement with the prosecutor, practicing staying calm, remembering every detail. But when she actually sat in that witness box and looked out at the courtroom, at Victoria's cold eyes, at the jury's curious faces, at William sitting pale and rigid in the gallery, everything felt different. Ms. Thompson, the prosecutor began, can you describe your relationship with Lucas Hartwell? I've known him since he was born, Grace said. I was there when he took his first steps. I made his first birthday cake. I've watched him grow from a baby into a little boy. I love him like he's my own. And can you describe what you observed in the months after Victoria Sterling moved into the Hartwell household? Grace told her story. All of it. The gradual changes in Lucas's behavior. The fear that crept into his eyes. The whispered threats she had overheard. The night she found him outside, freezing, alone. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Victoria's lawyer stood for cross-examination. She was a sharp-eyed woman with expensive shoes and a patronizing smile. Miss Thompson, you've worked for the Hartwell family for 12 years, is that correct? Yes. And in that time, have you ever disagreed with decisions made by Mr. Hartwell or other family members? Occasionally, but I've always deferred to their judgment. Until now. Until a child's life was at stake. The lawyer's smile tightened. You say you love Lucas like your own. Isn't it possible that your attachment to him has colored your perception of events? That you've exaggerated or misremembered things because you want to protect him? Grace met her gaze steadily. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not misremembering. I found a 5-year-old boy with blue lips and stiff fingers, curled up against a gate in December, because the woman sitting in that chair locked him outside. I held him while he sobbed and apologized for being bad. I watched him ask me if he was going to die. Those aren't things you exaggerate. Those aren't things you forget. The lawyer paused, clearly recalculating her approach. No further questions. Grace stepped down from the witness box with shaking legs. As she walked past the defense table, she looked at Victoria one last time. Victoria stared back, expressionless. But Grace saw something behind those cold eyes. Fear. Victoria Sterling was finally afraid. Day 4 was closing arguments and jury deliberation. Grace stayed home with Lucas, trying to keep things normal. They played board games, they watched cartoons, they made cookies that came out slightly burnt, but still delicious. Mrs.
Grace? Yes, sweetheart? What's going to happen to Victoria?
Grace set down the cookie she was decorating. I don't know yet. The jury is deciding right now. What's a jury? It's a group of people who listen to all the evidence and decide if someone did something wrong. Like judges? Sort of, but regular people, not just one person in a robe. Lucas considered this. What if they decide she didn't do anything wrong? Then we deal with that, together. But I don't think that's going to happen. Why not? Grace looked at him seriously. Because the truth matters, and the truth is that she hurt you. She hurt you badly, over and over again. And 12 people are going to hear that truth and make the right decision. How do you know? Grace reached over and took his hand. Because I have to believe it. And because I believe in you. The phone rang at 4:47 p.m. Grace answered immediately. William? It's over. His voice was thick with emotion. Guilty on all counts. Grace's legs gave out. She sank onto the kitchen stool, phone pressed to her ear. Guilty, she repeated. Felony child endangerment, reckless assault of a minor. Everything. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. What happens now? Sentencing is in 2 weeks. The prosecutor says she's looking at 7 to 12 years. 7 to 12 years. Grace closed her eyes. Grace? William's voice cracked. We did it. It's really over. Yes, she whispered. It's really over. Lucas appeared in the doorway, cookie in hand, eyes wide. Mrs. Grace? Why are you crying? Grace wiped her face and smiled. Because something wonderful just happened. What? Justice, baby. Justice happened. William came home an hour later, looking exhausted but lighter than Grace had seen him in months. He walked through the door, saw Lucas waiting in the foyer, and dropped to his knees. Come here, buddy. Lucas ran to him, and William wrapped him in a hug so tight it looked like he was trying to absorb all the pain of the past months and make it disappear. Is it over, Daddy? It's over. She's going away for a very long time. How long? William pulled back and looked at his son. Long enough that by the time she gets out, you'll be all grown up. You'll be a man. You'll be strong. And you won't ever have to be afraid of her again. Lucas thought about this. Will I remember her when I'm grown up? Maybe. But she won't be the thing you remember most. You'll remember the good things, the happy things, the people who loved you and kept you safe. Like you and Mrs. Grace? Exactly like me and Mrs. Grace. Lucas smiled, small but real. Okay, that sounds good. That night, Grace made Lucas's favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with hot dogs cut up inside. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't what you'd expect in a billionaire's mansion, but Lucas had requested it, and tonight, Lucas got whatever he wanted. They ate at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. William rolled up his sleeves and served himself from the pot, like a regular person. Lucas told a long, rambling story about something that had happened at school, that Grace only half understood, but laughed at anyway. It felt like a family. Not the family anyone had expected. Not a father and a stepmother and a child, but something else. Something built from crisis and survival and choice. Mrs. Grace, Lucas said, mouth full of macaroni. Don't talk with your mouth full. He swallowed exaggeratedly. Mrs. Grace? Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to stay with us forever? Grace glanced at William. He was watching her, waiting. That depends, she said carefully. Do you want me to? Yes. No hesitation. Forever and ever. Then I'll stay as long as you need me. What about when I don't need you anymore? When I'm all grown up and strong, like Daddy said? Grace smiled. Then I'll stay because I want to. Because you're my family. And family doesn't leave. Lucas grinned. Macaroni stuck to his cheek. Good. Because I don't want you to go. Ever. William cleared his throat. Lucas, why don't you go wash your face and get ready for bed? I need to talk to Mrs. Grace for a minute. Lucas slid off his chair and ran out of the kitchen. Grace heard his footsteps pounding up the stairs, full of energy she hadn't heard in months. He's coming back, she said softly. The real Lucas, the one from before. Thanks to you. Thanks to a lot of things. William stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. I've been thinking, he said slowly, about what happens next, about this family and what it looks like going forward. Okay? Lucas needs stability, consistency. He needs to know that the people in his life aren't going to disappear. I agree. William turned to face her. Grace, you've been more than a housekeeper for years. We both know that. You've been a caregiver, a protector, a mother figure in everything but name. And after what happened, after what you did for Lucas, for this family, I can't just go back to treating you like staff. Grace felt her heart rate quicken. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to change things, formally, legally. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I want to name you as Lucas's legal guardian in my estate planning. If anything ever happens to me, I want you to be the one who takes care of him. I want you to have a real role in his life, not just an employment contract." Grace stared at him. "William, I know it's a lot to ask. I know it's not what you signed up for when you took this job 12 years ago. But you're the only person Lucas truly trusts. The only person I truly trust. And I need to know that if I'm ever not here, he'll be with someone who loves him." "Of course I love him. You know I do." "Then say yes." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You really want this? It's not just gratitude talking?" "It's not gratitude. It's recognition. You saved my son's life. Not just physically. You saved who he is. You kept him whole when someone was trying to break him. That's not something you thank someone for with a bonus. That's something you honor with permanence." Grace wiped her eyes. "Yes. My answer is yes." William exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "Thank you. I'll have Tom draw up the papers this week." "William?" "Yes?" "Thank you for seeing me. For seeing what I did. Most people in your position wouldn't have." "Most people in my position wouldn't have deserved someone like you looking out for their children." He smiled sadly. "I almost lost my son because I was blind. I won't be blind again." The weeks that followed were full of small changes. Grace's room was upgraded from the servants' quarters to a proper guest suite on the second floor, closer to Lucas's room. Her job title changed from housekeeper to household manager, with a salary that reflected her true role in the family. More importantly, her place at the table changed. She no longer ate in the kitchen while William and Lucas dined elsewhere. She sat with them, talked with them, made decisions with them. She was consulted on Lucas's school choices, his medical appointments, his daily routine. Lucas noticed the change immediately. "Are you my mom now?" he asked one morning, with the blunt curiosity only children possess. Grace paused, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What makes you ask that?" "You do mom stuff. You make breakfast, you tuck me in. You tell me to clean my room. Moms do that." "Lots of people do those things, not just moms." "I know," Lucas poked at his cereal. "But I don't have a mom. I just have you and Daddy. And Daddy's a daddy. So what are you?" Grace set down her coffee and looked at him seriously. "I'm whatever you need me to be," she said. "If you want me to be like a mom, I can be that. If you want me to just be Mrs. Grace, I can be that too. You get to decide." Lucas thought hard, his small face scrunched in concentration. "Can you be both?" Grace smiled. "Both?" "Yeah, like Mrs. Grace Mom, or Mom Grace, or something." Grace laughed, the sound full and warm. "I think we can work something out." "Good." Lucas went back to his cereal, satisfied. Then, without looking up, "I'm glad you didn't leave. When Victoria was mean and tried to make you look bad, I was scared you would go away." "I almost did," Grace admitted. "There were moments when I thought about it, when I wondered if staying was worth the trouble." "What made you stay?" "You did. Every time I thought about leaving, I thought about you being alone with her. And I couldn't do it." "I couldn't leave you." Lucas nodded, like this made perfect sense. "That's what moms do. They don't leave." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "No, baby, they don't." Sentencing day arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. William went to the courthouse alone. Grace stayed home with Lucas, as they had agreed. Whatever happened in that courtroom, Lucas didn't need to be there for it. The morning passed slowly. Grace tried to keep busy, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, organizing shelves that were already organized. Lucas sensed her anxiety and stayed close, following her from room to room. "When will Daddy call?" he asked for the 5th time. "Soon, sweetheart. These things take time." "What if the judge says Victoria doesn't have to go to jail?" "That's not going to happen. She was found guilty. That doesn't change." "But what if—" "Lucas." Grace knelt down and took his hands. "I need you to trust me. Whatever happens today, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. All 3 of us." Lucas studied her face. "You really believe that?" "I really do." The phone rang at 11:23 a.m. Grace answered with a shaking hand. "William?" 9 years. His voice was steady, but she could hear the emotion underneath. She got 9 years. No possibility of early parole. Grace closed her eyes. 9 years. The judge called it systematic psychological torture of a defenseless child. He said Victoria showed no remorse, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. He gave her the maximum sentence under the guidelines. "It's really over then." "It's really over." Grace looked at Lucas, who was watching her with huge eyes. "Hold on," she said to William. "Someone wants to know what happened." She handed the phone to Lucas. He pressed it to his ear. "Daddy, what did the judge say?" Grace couldn't hear William's response, but she saw the moment Lucas understood. His whole body relaxed. The tension he had been carrying for months, maybe for his entire life as he knew it, seemed to drain away. "Okay," Lucas said. "Okay, Daddy, I love you too." He handed the phone back to Grace. "Daddy says he's coming home, and we're going to celebrate." "That sounds perfect. What do you want to do to celebrate?" Lucas thought about it seriously. Then his face lit up. "Can we get pizza and watch a movie and stay up late?" Grace smiled. "I think that can be arranged." Lucas threw his arms around her waist and hugged her tight. "Thank you, Mrs. Grace, for everything." Grace hugged him back, tears streaming down her face. "You're welcome, baby. You're so, so welcome." That evening, they ate pizza in the living room, something that would have been unthinkable in Victoria's time. Lucas sat between Grace and William on the couch, cheese dripping down his chin, completely absorbed in the animated movie playing on the screen. Every few minutes, he would laugh at something, loud, unrestricted laughter that filled the room. Each time, Grace and William would exchange a look that said, This is what we were fighting for." Halfway through the movie, Lucas fell asleep, head resting on Grace's shoulder, one hand still clutching a half-eaten slice of pizza. "I should put him to bed," Grace whispered. "Let him sleep a little longer," William said. "He looks so peaceful." They sat in silence, watching Lucas breathe, watching the movie play on without an audience. "I keep waiting to wake up," William finally said, "to find out this was all a dream and Victoria is still here and Lucas is still scared." "It's not a dream. This is real. This is your life now." "Our life," William corrected. "This is our life." Grace looked at him. "Our life." "You're part of this family, Grace. Not an employee, not an outsider. Part of it. Whatever that means going forward, whatever it looks like, you're here. Permanently." Grace felt something shift in her chest. A settling. An acceptance of something she had been afraid to hope for. "I'm here," she agreed. "Permanently." William smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him in longer than she could remember. "Then let's figure out what comes next. Together." Lucas stirred in his sleep, murmuring something incoherent. Grace adjusted his position, making sure he was comfortable. Whatever came next, she was ready. They all were. 6 months passed like water through open fingers. Grace marked the time not by calendars or seasons, but by the changes in Lucas. The way his laughter grew louder. The way he stopped asking permission to enter rooms. The way he ran through the house without checking over his shoulder, without bracing for punishment that would never come. He was healing. They all were. One morning in early summer, Grace woke to the sound of birds outside her window and the smell of something burning in the kitchen. She threw on her robe and hurried downstairs to find Lucas standing on a step stool, wielding a spatula like a weapon, staring at a pan full of what might have once been eggs. "I was trying to make you breakfast," he said, his voice small. "For your birthday." Grace stopped in the doorway. "My birthday?" "Daddy told me. He said you always make breakfast for everyone else, but nobody ever makes it for you. So I wanted to." Lucas looked at the ruined eggs. "But I think I did it wrong." Grace walked over and looked at the pan. The eggs were brown on the bottom, liquid on top, and somehow both overcooked and undercooked at the same time. It was, without question, the worst breakfast she had ever seen. It was also the most beautiful thing anyone had ever done for her. "You know what?" Grace said, pulling him into a hug. "I think these eggs look perfect." "Really?" Lucas peered at the pan doubtfully. "They look kinda gross." "The best gifts always look a little gross. It means someone tried really hard." William appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, grinning. "I told him to wake me up before he started cooking. He said he wanted it to be a surprise." "Surprise," Lucas said weakly. Grace laughed, the sound filling the kitchen. "It's the best surprise I've ever had. Now, let's clean this up together, and maybe make some toast instead. How does that sound? Can we put cinnamon on it?" "We can put whatever you want on it." They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table. Burnt toast with cinnamon sugar and fresh fruit that William had secretly bought the day before. Lucas talked non-stop about his plans for summer vacation, his new friend at school, the book he was reading about dinosaurs. Grace listened to every word. This was what normal felt like. This was what family felt like. She had almost forgotten. Summer brought changes beyond the weather. William sold the mansion. It was Lucas's idea, surprisingly. One evening over dinner, he had looked around the formal dining room with its crystal chandeliers and silk curtains and said, "This house is too big. It feels empty." William had set down his fork. "What do you mean, buddy?" "There's too many rooms where bad things happened. I don't like walking past Victoria's old bedroom. I don't like the back door. I don't like the garden shed." Lucas picked at his food. "Can we live somewhere else? Somewhere that doesn't remember?" Grace and William had exchanged a long look. A week later, William called a real estate agent. They found a new house in September. Smaller, warmer, with big windows that let in the light, and a backyard just the right size for a growing boy. It was in a quiet neighborhood where the neighbors waved when you drove past, and children played in the streets until their mothers called them home for dinner. The day they moved in, Lucas ran through every room, touching the walls, opening the closets, claiming spaces that had never known fear. "This one's my room," he shouted from upstairs. "And this one can be Mrs. Grace's room. And this one can be the room where we watch movies." William stood in the empty living room, hands in his pockets, looking slightly overwhelmed. "Are you okay?" Grace asked. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to fall apart somehow." "It won't." "How do you know?" Grace looked around the bare walls, the boxes stacked in corners, the sunlight streaming through clean windows. "Because we built this," she said. "Not with money or business deals. We built it with choices. Hard ones, good ones, the kind that don't fall apart." William nodded slowly. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." He laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty house, filling it with something that felt like home. Fall came with its own rhythms. Lucas started second grade at a new school. There were nervous moments. The first day, the first time he got in trouble for talking in class, the first parent-teacher conference. But there were good moments, too. His first real friend in the neighborhood, a boy named Marcus, who lived 3 houses down. His first soccer game, where he scored a goal and ran to the sidelines screaming for Grace and William to make sure they had seen. They had seen. They saw everything now. One afternoon, Lucas came home from school with a drawing clutched in his hand. "We had to draw our families," he explained, spreading the paper on the kitchen table, "for a project." Grace looked at the drawing. 3 figures stood in front of a house with a yellow door. On the left, a tall man with brown hair. William, obviously. On the right, a woman with dark skin and a big smile. Grace. And in the middle, holding both their hands, a small boy with a gap-toothed grin. Above the figures, in wobbly child's handwriting, Lucas had written, "My family." "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Grace said, her voice thick. "I put you in it," Lucas said, pointing unnecessarily at the figure on the right. "Because you're part of my family. My teacher asked if you were my mom, and I said—" He hesitated. "I said, kind of. Is that okay?" Grace knelt down so she was at his eye level. "That's more than okay. That's perfect. Some kids at school have 2 moms, or 2 dads, or just 1 parent, or grandparents, or all kinds of families. My teacher said families come in lots of shapes." "Your teacher is right." "So we're a shape too? Our family?" Grace smiled. "We're the best shape." Lucas hugged her tight, the drawing crinkling between them. "I'm glad Victoria didn't break us," he whispered. Grace held him closer. "Me too, baby. Me too." Winter arrived gently that year. The first snow fell on a Saturday morning in December. Lucas woke everyone up at 6 a.m., bouncing on beds and shouting about the winter wonderland outside. "Can we build a snowman? Please, please, please!" "It's 6 in the morning," William groaned. "Snow doesn't care what time it is," Grace laughed from the doorway. "He's got a point." An hour later, all 3 of them were in the backyard, bundled in coats and scarves, rolling balls of snow across the frozen grass. Lucas directed the operation with military precision. "That one needs to be bigger. No, bigger. Grace, can you find some sticks for arms? Daddy, the head is crooked." "Since when did you become a snowman expert?" William asked, adjusting the lopsided head. "Since always. I've been waiting my whole life to build a real snowman." Grace paused, sticks in hand. Lucas had never built a snowman before. She realized with a pang that there were probably a lot of things he had never done. Things that normal children did every winter. Things that had been denied to him during the dark months of Victoria's control. "Then let's make it the best snowman ever," Grace said firmly. They worked for 2 hours. When they finished, the snowman was slightly lumpy, definitely crooked, and wearing a combination of mismatched accessories they had scavenged from the house. A baseball cap instead of a top hat. A dishcloth for a scarf. Buttons that didn't quite match for eyes. It was hideous. It was perfect. Lucas stood back and admired their creation with the satisfaction of an artist viewing a masterpiece. "We should name him," he announced. "Any ideas?" William asked. Lucas thought hard. "Mr. Survivor." Grace and William exchanged a look. "Why that name?" Grace asked gently. "Because he's standing up, even though it's cold. And we built him together. And he's not scared of anything." Lucas nodded to himself, certain of his logic. That's what survivors do. They stand up together, and they're not scared. Grace felt tears freeze on her cheeks. She blamed the cold. "Mr. Survivor it is," William said. They took a picture, all three of them posing with their crooked, lumpy, perfect snowman. Grace had the photo framed and hung in the hallway of their new home. Whenever she passed it, she smiled. Spring brought something Grace hadn't expected. A letter from prison. William found it in the mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon, addressed to him in handwriting he didn't recognize. When he opened it and saw the signature at the bottom, his face went white. Victoria. Grace found him in his study an hour later, the letter still in his hands, unread beyond the first line. "She wants to apologize," William said flatly. "She's found God, and wants to make amends, and hopes we can one day forgive her." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." William set the letter down like it was poisonous. "Part of me wants to burn it. Part of me wants to write back and tell her exactly what I think of her apology." "And the other part?" William was quiet for a long moment. "The other part wonders if she means it. If people can really change. If forgiveness is something I'm supposed to give, for my own sake, if not for hers." Grace sat down across from him. "What does your gut tell you?" "My gut tells me she's manipulating again. That this is another strategy, another angle." He laughed bitterly. "But how do I know? How do I know if my instincts are right or if I'm just too damaged to see clearly?" "You're not damaged. You're protective. There's a difference." "Is there?" Grace leaned forward. "William, forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give when you're ready, if you're ever ready. Victoria doesn't get to demand it from you on her timeline. She doesn't get to write a letter and erase what she did. So I just ignore her?" "You do whatever brings you peace. If that means ignoring her, ignore her. If that means writing back, write back. If that means forgiving her someday, forgive her. But do it for you, for Lucas, not for her." William looked at the letter. Then he looked at Grace. "What would you do?" Grace didn't hesitate. "I would burn it. Not because I'm incapable of forgiveness. I'm not. But because some people don't deserve the space in your head. Victoria took enough from this family. I wouldn't give her another second." William nodded slowly. He picked up the letter, walked to the fireplace, and fed it to the flames. They watched it burn together. "Feel better?" Grace asked. "I don't know yet." William watched the last corner of paper curl and blacken. "But I feel lighter." The first anniversary of that terrible December night passed quietly. Grace didn't mention it. William didn't mention it. But they both knew. They both remembered. Lucas woke up that morning with no indication that the date meant anything to him. He ate his breakfast, went to school, came home with stories about his friends and his teacher and the science project he was working on. But that night, as Grace tucked him into bed, he said something that stopped her heart. "Grace?" "Yes, baby?" "1 year ago, you found me." She sat down slowly on the edge of his bed. "You remember the date?" "I remember everything about that night." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "I remember being so cold I couldn't feel my fingers. I remember thinking nobody was going to come. I remember being sure I was going to die out there." He looked at her. "And then you came." Grace took his hand. "I'll always come for you, Lucas. Always." "I know." He smiled, and the smile reached his eyes. "That's why I'm not scared anymore. Because I know that no matter what happens, you'll find me." Grace leaned down and kissed his forehead. "No matter what."
Grace? Yes?
"I love you." The words hung in the air, simple and enormous. "I love you too, Lucas. More than anything in this world." He closed his eyes, still smiling, and Grace sat there in the dark for a long time, watching him breathe, watching him sleep peacefully in a warm bed, in a safe home, surrounded by people who loved him. 1 year ago, she had found a broken boy freezing in the cold. Tonight, that boy was whole. On the last day of school, Lucas came home with a certificate. "Most improved student," he announced proudly, holding it up for Grace and William to see. "Ms. Rodriguez said I worked really hard this year, and I should be proud of myself." "We're proud of you too," William said, pulling him into a hug. "Can we frame it, like the snowman picture?" "We can frame anything you want." That evening, they had a celebration dinner, Lucas's choice, which meant spaghetti with extra meatballs and garlic bread and chocolate cake for dessert. They ate too much and laughed too loud and told stories that went nowhere but didn't need to. After dinner, Lucas went to play video games in the living room. Grace and William sat at the kitchen table, watching him through the doorway. "He's happy," William said quietly. "He is. I didn't know if he'd ever be happy again, after everything. I thought the damage might be permanent." Grace shook her head. "Children are resilient, more resilient than we give them credit for. He's not the same boy he was before Victoria. He can't be. But he's not broken. He's just different. Stronger in some ways, more careful in others." "And us? Are we different?" Grace considered the question. "I think we're more honest, about what matters, about what we're willing to fight for, about who we are when things get hard." William nodded slowly. "I used to think success meant building companies, making money, accumulating things." He gestured around the modest kitchen. "Now I think success means this: a warm house, a healthy child, someone who stays when everything falls apart." Grace looked at him. "Is that what I am? Someone who stayed?" "You're more than that." William met her eyes. "You're the reason there was anything left to save." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to Lucas's laughter from the other room. "Grace?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For that night. For every night since. For choosing us when you could have walked away." Grace smiled. "There was never really a choice. Not for me." "Why not?" "Because that boy in there needed someone. And I was there. That's all it ever was. Being there when someone needs you." "That's everything," William said. "That's literally everything." 3 months later, on a crisp October afternoon, Grace found Lucas in the backyard, sitting on the swing they had installed that summer. He wasn't swinging. He was just sitting, feet dragging in the dirt, looking up at the sky. "Room for one more?" Grace asked. Lucas scooted over, and Grace sat beside him on the wide wooden seat. "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing. Everything." Lucas kicked at the ground. "Do you think Victoria ever thinks about me? In prison?" Grace's heart tightened. "I don't know, baby. Why?" "Sometimes I think about her. Not a lot, but sometimes. I wonder if she's sorry. Really sorry. Or if she's just mad she got caught." "What do you think?" Lucas was quiet for a long time. "I think she's mad she got caught. I don't think people like her feel sorry. They just feel angry when things don't go their way." Grace nodded. "That sounds about right." "But here's the thing," Lucas looked at her. "I don't care anymore, whether she's sorry or not, whether she thinks about me or not. It doesn't change anything. I'm still here. I'm still okay. She can't hurt me anymore." "No, she can't." "So why should I waste time wondering about her?" Lucas shrugged. "Ms. Peterson, my therapist, she says that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. So I'm not going to be angry anymore. I'm just going to live my life and be happy and let her rot." Grace blinked. That's very mature for someone who just turned 7. I'm almost 7.5, Lucas said with dignity. That's basically 8, which is basically a teenager. Grace laughed. Okay, Mr. Almost Teenager. What do you want to do with this happy life of yours? Right now, I want to swing, really high, until I feel like I'm flying. That sounds like a plan. They swung together, higher and higher, until the chains creaked and the wind rushed past, and Lucas was laughing with pure, uncomplicated joy. And Grace thought, this is what I saved him for. Not just survival, but this. Flight. Freedom. A future without ceiling. That evening, after Lucas was in bed and the house was quiet, Grace stood at her bedroom window looking out at the stars. She thought about the night that had changed everything. The cold, the crying, the small body curled against the gate. She thought about all the moments since, the fear, the fighting, the long, slow climb back to something like normal. She thought about who she had been before. Invisible, overlooked, trained to stay quiet and follow rules and never interfere in family matters. She thought about who she was now. Guardian, protector, mother in everything that mattered. A woman who had stared down evil and won. The journey had cost her things: comfort, security, the simplicity of a life without stakes. But it had given her more: purpose, family, a love she hadn't known she was capable of giving or receiving. She would do it all again. Every terrifying moment, every sleepless night, every confrontation with Victoria's cold cruelty. She would do it 1,000 times for that boy sleeping down the hall, for the family they had built from the wreckage of someone else's destruction. Grace closed the curtains and climbed into bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments worth fighting for. But tonight, in this warm house, surrounded by people she loved and who loved her back, Grace Thompson slept peacefully. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes or carry weapons or make headlines. Sometimes heroes carry trash bags and hear crying in the cold and refuse to look away. Sometimes heroes are invisible until the moment they choose not to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the act of choosing to see, to stay, to fight for someone who cannot fight for themselves, is enough to change the ending of a story that was never supposed to have a happy conclusion. Lucas Hartwell had been abandoned in the cold by someone who should have protected him. Grace Thompson had found him, and that single moment of courage, that decision to act when silence would have been easier, had saved not just a boy, but an entire family. The house that once held secrets and fear now held laughter and warmth. The woman who once was invisible had become irreplaceable. And the child who had learned to disappear had finally learned that he was worth being found.